twice-monthly conversation with restaurateurs, chefs, growers, and others who have helped generate the legends associated with eateries across the Mid-South. The team at McGehee is proud to sponsor this adventure with the goal of preserving the stories that have helped cultivate an amazing food scene across the Mid-South. So kick back and enjoy a Heaping Spoonful.
Hello everyone, and welcome to this episode of Heaping Spoonful. I'm Kelly Bass, and today I'll be visiting with Scott McGehee, who with his partners in Yellow Rocket Concepts have made the biggest collective impact on the Little Rock, Arkansas restaurant scene ever. And I dare anyone to argue with me on that. Not to brag, but I ought to know. I've been paying close attention to the local culinary scene my entire life, including about 30 years of writing restaurant reviews for local publications. My wife and I still plan our days and definitely our vacations based on where are we going to eat and what are we going to eat and when are we going to eat. As it turns out, somewhat coincidentally, although Little Rock's not a big city, my culinary journey has been entwined with Scott's and his great-grandmothers and his fathers before him for almost my entire life. So more on that in a few minutes. Welcome, Scott.
Thank you for having me, Kelly. It's so good to be here.
Yeah.
And Rusty.
Yeah, we got Rusty Mathis from Benny Keith hanging out with us today. I'm so happy our listeners get to hear your story today because it's really unprecedented in this market, and I'm serious. We don't always go...
That's arguable.
No.
There's a guy named Denny Sayre and an old school guy named Andre Simone that might disagree.
Well, it's a little... it's packaged up a little differently. We don't always go chronologically in these podcast discussions, but I think I'd like to do that today just to help our listeners trace the journey that took you from growing up in a foodie culture before farm to table was a cliche, and then to college and on to culinary school, to your first really big-time restaurant job, back to Little Rock, and today, if I did my math right, I think your group has 9 restaurants that represent 5 concepts. If I think that's right.
Yeah, we 9 restaurants, 5 concepts. Of course, my original concept is Boulevard Bread Company,
which is not yours now.
Which I sold about 8-9 years ago. But it's still my baby, and it's like my child that went away to college and doesn't talk to me much anymore. Although I do get my coffee there every day.
Well, I have a staple of my freezer is I go get 2 baguettes sliced and put them in the freezer and whip them out a few at a time when I'm ready for some really good bread. But okay, one point I want to make from the start, and this is important and not completely unique, but certainly not the norm, is that Yellow Rocket Concepts is not just a true force in terms of the business that runs through your restaurant. So you're a force for good. You got good people. You do good things for other people. All of you do. Besides serving good food with good service. And your team, just everywhere I go, there's good karma coming out of your restaurant. So damn, son, you've done good. So congratulations on that.
You know, people is, kindness, is universal. And particularly with my team, I'm very lucky to have partners in a work family who are all very passionate, not just about guest service and food and cooking, but also just being good people.
Yeah, and and I can tell that they love being nice to one another. There's just always a good vibe, whether I'm at Big Orange or Local Lime or down at Lost 40 or whatever. So I want to wind the clock back to before you were born, which is 1963. Which is when your great-grandparents, Ruby Thomas and her husband Herbert, opened the Red Apple Inn on the brand-new Greer's Ferry Lake outside Heber Springs.
Right.
One of the first resorts in Arkansas and still a really popular destination. I was there for a Leadership Arkansas event a couple of years ago, and they've done some renovations. The food's good. It's a hopping spot. So talk about growing up. All you've ever known since you can start remembering is having family that are involved in the hospitality industry.
Yeah, really predating that was my Aunt Maisie. And This is, she opened the first restaurant in Hillcrest in 1933.
Wow.
It was called the Copper Kettle. And it was in so the Ice House closed down around 1929 after the advent of the electric refrigerator.
Right.
And it sat empty for a few years. And my Aunt Maisie, Maisie Collier, which Ruby Thomas's older sister, Ruby Thomas was the youngest of 11.
Woo!
And so they're from Paragould, Arkansas.
Okay.
And so my Aunt Maisie opened the Copper Kettle, and they had a beautiful rooftop terrace in 1933. And they had a big open hearth. They had 2 copper kettles that hung near the hearth. I currently have one of them. Jean Gordon, my great aunt, has the other. And I'm hoping to get those back together one day. But then Ruby Thomas, my great grandmother, opened the Red Apple Inn. With the influence of her older sister and growing up around that, she opened the Red Apple Inn, and she was known. She did not hire a chef. She found the best 10 or 15 home cooks she could find in the state of Arkansas, got them together at the Red Apple Inn, and they created what back then was something really, really unique and special, and still is today.
Yeah, no doubt. And, for those who are Arkansans and know, I mean, it's not a long drive from Little Rock. You can get there from about anywhere. And it's super beautiful, too. So, and then your father, your late father, Frank, is also legendary on the Arkansas culinary scene, being the force behind opening Juanita's and Blue Mesa Grill with his partner at the time, Mark Abernathy. Another restaurateur has been featured here on Heaping Spoonful. So tell us about, I don't try to do the math, or I didn't really try to do the math, but at the point in time when Juanita's was opening, and then it was a few years later for Blue Mesa, how old were you, and were you paying much attention to what your dad was doing, or were you just going on about life?
Well, I'm going to tell you about my father, who was, in my opinion, the greatest, gourmet home cook in the history of the state. Cool. And I'm a little bit biased, obviously. I'm going to back up for 2 seconds before I hit that, because wanted to talk for 2 seconds about the profound influence of my great-grandmother. And she had a big garden on Eden Isle. This is before it was built up,
right?
Before there were a bunch of houses. This is early on, or the early 70s, when the resort was kicking. But she had a big vegetable garden that my great-grandfather tended to. And we would dig up potatoes and pick purple hull peas and lady peas and blackberries and just everything we could find and take it back to her kitchen. She had big vaulted ceilings, and she had giant, up above her cabinets, she had a giant spoon, a giant whisk, a giant goblet, all these like huge, like antique giant kitchen tools.
Cool.
And she told me, so I would take the food, I would hold the lady peas. Pone bread was a staple.
Is that like cornbread? Or?
It's hot water cornbread.
Okay.
You pour boiling water over cornmeal with some fat and salt, and then you patty it and fry it, and that's it. So she was teaching me at 3 or 4 years old how to carefully drop the pone bread into the hot grease away from you so it doesn't splatter on you.
Yeah.
Those are just basic fundamental lessons. But she also told me stories that giants would come pounding on her door in the middle of the night demanding food. And so I was, of course, that was like Santa Claus for me. I was hook, line, and sinker. So I had these just incredible visions of her with those giant whisks and spoons.
Yeah, making for the giants.
Cooking food for the giants. And that really stuck with me. I probably believed in that longer than I did Santa Claus.
Yeah.
Or the Easter Bunny.
Well, and obviously your father was just one more generation closer to her, so he learned a lot too. And so you say he was a fabulous home chef himself.
He loved traveling. He loved cooking. He was passionate about it. I was raised, now my mother also gets a lot of credit. Her mother, Kathleen Whiteman, and her are amazing cooks.
Yeah. You come by it naturally.
True Southern cooks.
Yeah.
And they were more like the Barks root beer, and we always had rainbow sherbet. They bought a birthday cake, my grandmother, my mother's side, once a week from Kohler's Bakery their entire life. So
whether it was anybody's birthday or not, right?
And then in stark contrast, my father, he had a bare refrigerator, but he had black truffle oil or black truffles in a jar, and he had arborio rice,
right,
and a hunk of Parmigiano Reggiano and some Roquefort, and a crust of bread. So that was my two different experiences.
Yeah, they complement each other well, though. That's
indeed.
Cool.
My dad was a real pioneer, just in terms of his vision for Juanita's, him and Mark, and just his passion for food and cooking in life.
Yeah. Well, again, the apple didn't fall far from the tree. So, you were born, or at least grew up in Fayetteville. Your dad played for the Razorbacks and was going to Fayetteville, and you ended up back there and for college yourself. Is that when you started working in the restaurant world, or not?
I have a passion for also science and history, and that was my emphasis in college. Now, I will admit, my first year of college, I didn't go to class.
Yeah.
I had a lot of fun, and then I came back and went to UALR and got serious. While I was at UALR, I started working at Blue Mesa Grill.
Oh yeah, that's fun.
And my father and Vince Schillereth came up with all those recipes. A lot of respect for Vince Schillereth. He was the chef of the Blue Mesa Grill when they opened.
Okay, cool.
And Vince left for architecture school. And,
wow.
And Mark Abernathy was like, well, hey, Scott, you can be chef for $8,000 a year. So I was forced into that position and just absolutely fell in love with it. And I just decided, you know what, this is what I want to do for my life. I've all that nostalgia and all those lessons from my youth just came rushing back in, and I realized, hey, I can do this as a career. Never occurred to me until then.
Right.
And
so off to culinary school?
Yeah, at that point, Roger Reynolds and I were working at the Blue Mesa Grill, and I had read in Gourmet Magazine that the best place to train as an up-and-coming chef in America was Chez Panisse.
Yeah.
Under Chef Alice Waters. And so I became a bit obsessed with that. I wrote them letters, letter after letter, essentially begging for a job. And finally they said, hey, next time you're out, come do a tryout. And I didn't know what a tryout meant. But so Roger and I dropped everything. We loaded up my Mazda 323 with a little U-Haul trailer on the back of it, and we drove to California.
Yeah. Showed up at Chez Panisse.
I showed up on their doorstep. I was already well known as that crazy kid from Arkansas who wrote all the letters.
Yeah.
And I had a interview with Catherine Brundall, who's a real famous chef, rest her soul. And she said, come in tomorrow, bring your knives, we'll do a tryout. Of course, I didn't have any knives. So I rushed to Columbus Cutlery in San Francisco. I purchased knives. I stayed up half the night trying to sharpen them. This is before Google and YouTube.
Right.
So I
do it on your own. Right?
So I now have since learned, when you're using a sharpening steel, which by the way doesn't sharpen a knife, it only hones it, but you only use the top couple of inches, and the rest is for oops. And so I think I cut my thumb a couple times trying to use the whole length of the steel. And I showed up the next morning, and for a week, I just swept the polish off the floor. I kept my head down. I did what I was told. And at the end of the week, I told them I would wash dishes for free to prove my work ethic. And little did I know they had a stack of resumes to the ceiling from chefs all over the world. But they told me when they hired me, they said no one has ever offered to wash dishes for free.
Well, good for you.
And that's why they gave me the job.
Well, I mean, persistence of the letter writing, and then willingness to do whatever it takes to help the team. Those are good values.
Not that I could afford to wash dishes for free, and they actually paid me from day one.
Right.
But
you were willing.
But I was certainly willing.
So how long did you stay at Chez Panisse?
I was there for about 6 years. I left for a year to work in Italy and travel, and then I came back to Chez Panisse for a year, and then finally I'd worked every position at Chez Panisse, including the downstairs, And I honestly, at that point, I'd met Christina, the mother of my children, and a dear, dear friend of mine to this day who owns Boulevard Bread Company.
Right.
And we had kind of done it all in San Francisco. I'd worked every position at Chez Panisse. Opening a restaurant there, I had realized was a huge amount of red tape, a lot of competition, and a lot of money that I didn't have.
Right.
And we wanted to have children, and home called. I'm an Arkansas kid. I was born in Fayetteville and raised in Little Rock. So
when you came back here, was it knowing that you were going to open Boulevard Bread, or did that come to you once you got here?
So when I came back, Roger and I went out there together. And Roger went to work first for Tassajara Bakery. So Roger and I had a plan. I was going to do the savory side. I went to Chez Panisse to train, and I went to the California Culinary Academy and worked at Chez Panisse part-time while I was in school, and then went to Chez Panisse full-time after. Roger went to Tassajara Bakery, worked there for many years, and then went to Noe Valley Bakery under Craig Ponsford and became one of the best bakers. I think he's the best baker that has ever existed from Arkansas.
Wow.
And I think he's as good as Andre Simone, who's not from Arkansas.
No, legendary. All right, well, listen, we're going to take a quick break here on Heap and Spoonful. We're talking with Scott McGehee, so hang out, everybody. We'll be right back.
I hope you're enjoying this episode of Heaping Spoonful. We at Benny Keith Foods enjoy talking about the food scene almost as much as we enjoy providing the top quality ingredients that help restaurateurs and chefs across the Mid-South create their magic. Now let's dive even deeper into the culinary world with your host, Kelly Bass.
All right, welcome back to Heaping Spoonful. I'm Kelly Bass, and today we're talking with Scott McGehee, chef, restaurateur, general do-gooder, and partner in Yellow Rocket Concepts, a dominant force on the independent restaurant scene in Little Rock. So when we took a break, we were talking about your decision to leave, to come back here, and you and your wife were going to start a family, and again, family means coming home and having a little support and a little more affordable, mellow place to live than you were in California. So again, we talked about Roger and his baking prowess. So did you guys say, all right, it's on, we're going to give Little Rock its first, nothing against any bakery that is here, and there's a legendary one on Main Street that is fabulous. But I'm telling you what, there's never been anything like Boulevard Bread. And I will say that it is when I look back on the culinary history of Little Rock, that was one of the brightest spots that made the biggest difference for this town. Because people who don't know, and it's still just as good, the best baguette, the best ciabatta, the best cookies. Oh my God, those cookies. Not to mention the fact that you brought in the types of meats and cheeses that now you can find other places, but boy, you couldn't find them in 1999.
Well, once again, I would be remiss if I didn't give absolute 100% credit to Roger Reynolds for the baking program. Now, I completed a baking course at the California Culinary Academy. I love baking desserts. But the savory side is my passion, and so the bread, the recipes that you enjoy today were brought here by Roger Reynolds and perfected by Roger Reynolds, and the baking team over there now does an amazing job of just honoring his knowledge in that original craft. And then as far as Boulevard goes, no, I was opening a place. My father, I came back to help out with Juanita's, which had gone downhill. Mark had left. My father is a great home cook, but is not a restaurateur.
Right.
And I came back to consult them temporarily, and ended up my ex-wife got pregnant with our first child, Milo, one of the loves of my life, and we were going to open a restaurant. Ironically, Juanita's was going to downsize their menu, and they were just going to be on the bar side where South on Main is, right?
Yeah.
And they were going to be more of a taco bar and music venue, and then the restaurant side of Juanita's
Now Oxford American.
We were going to. I was going to call that Soma Cafe, and it was. And I have the original menu from 1998 or 9, and it was going to be Chez Panisse-esque, but with Arkansas ingredients. And so, kind of a mixture of of what Matt Bell did and Jack and Corey did at the Root, and the Soma. The name Soma Cafe came from Mr. Wittenberg, who was trying to brand that area as Soma at the time before it was called Soma.
Right.
And
cool.
And then so in the process of developing Soma Cafe, I couldn't find the bread I needed for a French, Italian, Mediterranean, Arkansas farm supported type restaurant. And, Roger was excited to bake bread, and we were going to have a wood-burning oven at the Soma Cafe. So we were not going to do a bakery, but then we decided, hey, how are we going to open this place without the coffee, the bread, the cheese, the gourmet ingredients that are currently not available?
And what you were used to getting in California.
And then we had this great opportunity. My father was never one to help me with a red cent. To my credit, I always that was always a big. He always told me, "Hey, you got to make it on your own in this world, and you'll thank me one day."
Yeah.
But Jimily's had closed down in the Heights. It was a little cheese shop, a great cheese shop, and so I got to step into a fully built-out kitchen, which saved us a tremendous amount of money, and we painted it and stuck the name up there and opened up a gourmet emporium, coffee, bread, soup, salad, sandwich, and also we did a nightly dinner special so I could be hyper creative, support local farmers, and it became Boulevard Bread Company. Of course, the original name of that was Real Food, Bakery, and Gourmet. And I, at the last minute, decided that sounded too pretentious. So I was about 20 years ago in October.
Right.
I mean, literally 20 years ago today.
Right.
I backed up, and I had been scraping floors and painting and helping the carpenters build the cabinets and installing the big deck ovens. And I backed up to the corner of Kavanaugh, and I looked up at the sign, Kavanaugh BLVD, and that's when it hit me, Boulevard Bread. And so that's
rolls off the tongue.
That's where that name came from, was just that green street sign that said Kavanaugh BLVD. And so we changed the name. I actually drew the first logo,
Wow.
And,
an artist too.
And I kind of designed. That's pre-Amber Brewer.
Yeah,
she's a lot better than me.
She's better than about everybody.
She's the best. Yeah. The sandwich menu at Boulevard, we were being forced to open very quickly because we were out of money. Sandwiches became 60% of our sales.
Yeah,
and I developed that sandwich menu, all the sandwiches that are still there today, literally the late night before and the morning before we opened, and they stuck.
And they're still there. That's great. Well, I'll tell you, I talked about our lives and culinary lives being intertwined, but my sister Nancy, older sister Nancy, worked one summer in high school at Red Apple Inn with your late second cousin Jane Gordon, and for your great-grandmother. And then Nancy moved to Paris in 1981, and she came back to visit a lot when my mother was still alive, which she was when you opened Boulevard Bread. And we went up there and got baguette, and she said, "This is as good as my corner bakery in Paris." And I said, that is high praise, because, I mean, that's the mothership of baguette. So loved it, and always have loved it. And so then the next thing I know about is you did Zaza. And was that another situation where you saw a void in the culinary scene? Because we had pizza, but we didn't have that kind of pizza. And then, of course, nobody was making gelato or having that creative salad, options that you have. Did you just say, we need one of those?
Well, it's my uncle moved to Italy 30 years ago over, and or at the time he had been there 10 or 15 years, and so I had been to Italy many times. Io parlo molto buono italiano, mi famiglia via in Arezzo, Toscana. So I have a family in Arezzo. I've been there many times. I have a passion for Napoli and Tuscan style pizza and gelato. And that's when I hooked up with my amazing, incredible partner who I adore, John Beachboard.
Oh, okay.
And so when I sold Boulevard to Christina, I transitioned all that passion into Zaza. And John was very passionate about this new concept that was popping up, which was this fresh salad concept. Mm-hmm. And he had been to Colorado to one of those places where you select all of these really fresh ingredients. And we decided that it would be fun to do kind of the fast casual concept that included wood oven pizza, gelato, and really great salad. And
good wine, good beer.
Zaza, I was thinking to myself, this is, at the time I wasn't even putting two and two together that za is the word for pizza. I don't even think I knew that. But I was driving around thinking, okay, Heights moms want to go have a salad and a glass of white wine. Let's go to, and it just Zaza, just kind of rolled off the tongue.
Cool.
And so that's where that name came from. Subconsciously, though, there's also a great restaurant on the south side of the Market Centrale in Florence called Zaza.
Oh,
and it's one of my favorite little restaurants.
Cool.
And
And I think Zaza Conway maybe was next.
Zaza Conway was next. We had an opportunity up there.
Conway was blowing up. It's still blowing up. They got liquor by the drink, and again, you're a known entity, restaurateur, and they're taking a known brand like Zaza and bringing it to Conway. And if you remember, or maybe not remember, you hired me to edit the menu and proofread the menu, and you paid me in trade, and I used that trade dollars to have my rehearsal dinner with my wife Ashley and our out-of-town friends and family at Zaza's in the Heights, including Nancy, my sister.
You're one of the best writers in Arkansas and best editors. All due respect to my mother, who is also an amazing editor.
But that was what was so cool. And so then again, at that point, did you kind of go, you know what, we can make this thing even bigger than this? Because did you sort of say, why don't we try to think in terms of a restaurant group, or did they just come one at a time and then you found your score like, my God, we got a group?
Never occurred to me to have a restaurant group. And the moniker Yellow Rocket stems from, well, number one, it's a big part of nostalgia of my childhood. Jim Porter, who started the Yellow Rocket with one of the first video arcades in Arkansas.
Yeah,
I was pretty much lived there when I was 13, 14.
Pumping quarters in those machines.
Exactly,
yeah.
But so there's a lot of nostalgia in that name, I just everyone in our group got really tired of reciting a paragraph when they were asked where they work. And so we came up with this moniker pretty much out of respect for the work team that got sick of saying I work at A, B, C, D, E, F, and G.
Yeah. Well, so then I guess the West Little Rock again, Chenal, the promenade was built, and you guys came in there with Big Orange.
Yep.
And again, I felt like, wow, better quality beef, better quality buns, better quality French fries. Better quality home. Nobody was doing homemade chips really at that point in time.
Right.
And those milkshakes, I just appreciate the fact that they'll split them, because I would eat the whole one, but half just does me right. So was that again the same thing? It's like, okay, we've done this style of pizza that I've learned to love in Italy. Let's just make a damn good burger.
Big Orange, number one, the name. Everyone asks me, my favorite color is orange.
Cool.
And it's just that simple.
Yeah.
and the bun that we created the bun when I owned Boulevard, and Ashton and I developed that, and John Beachboard, the three of us developed that recipe together, and it looked like a big orange because it was tall. Yeah. It was tall. We didn't egg wash it because I don't like that feeling on a bun. but it did have that big kind of tall, a little bit overproofed, kind of light and airy, pillowy kind of texture, and I like the color orange. And it just so happens that there's a business by the name of Blanc Burger that had built out a space in West Little Rock, and then they decided not to follow through. And so it was already built as a burger restaurant.
Sweet.
And so we got to step into that and paint the walls orange. And Amber developed an amazing logo and look and vibe and feel. We poured our heart and soul into all of the recipes and sauces and techniques, and Big Orange was born. The name also came. I have to give a little credit to one of my favorite bakeries in Phoenix called Le Grand Orange, which means, of course, the Big Orange in French.
Bread, yes.
And it's almost Boulevard Bread-esque in terms of its vibe.
Well, I don't know who I have to thank or my liver has to hate for the creation of the Velvet Orange.
Right.
Oh my God, I love those cocktails.
That would be Lee Edwards.
Oh, Lee, I should have known. Well, we're known to stop into the Midtown Big Orange and have one or two of those while we have burgers and other stuff too.
They've been doing those on the rocks lately, and it's shockingly delicious.
Well, I'm going to have to. That gives me a good reason to go back.
Yeah.
And again, we're going to end up having to keep talking because you kept opening restaurants, and so Local Lime was next, also at the Promenade Chenal in West Little Rock, Arkansas, and same thing, really quality street tacos, and all the things that go with those. And
moving back, John was also a huge part of John, who was my sous chef at Boulevard for many years,
I did not know that.
Has an incredible palate. So along this ride, he's been an incredible partner in terms of we bounce things off each other, we critique each other constantly. Sure. Oh, this could be 10% better. It's a never-ending process. And same with Ben Brainerd, mm-hmm. who we partnered with Ben for the first time with Local Lime. And Ben was my sous chef after John at Boulevard Bread Company. So two of my former sous chefs became my partners.
That's great.
And at this point, Amber was working for us, and we had her creative genius. And honestly, it's about the food, but it's also about the look and the feel and the vibe. And Amber, no one is as creative and hardworking and dedicated and exceptional as she is. She's probably arguably the most important ingredient in our success.
For those who don't know, not only does she make your restaurants look fabulous, but she does your marketing. I mean, y'all are well represented.
And she designs like all the beer cans and all the menus and the interior design and she has an assistant, Brittany Hallmark, who's also just an absolute goddess in terms of her abilities and her. Those two together and their larger team are the best.
Well, one thing I've learned in this business is that once you've been a proven operator, once you've learned how to run a restaurant and how to treat your people and how to treat your customers, much easier to replicate that somewhere else than to just start from scratch. So when you guys opened, I remember seeing you downtown one time and said, we're thinking about another concept and we can't really talk about what it is right now.
Right.
And it turned out to be Lost 40. Right. And so all of a sudden I'm like, you can sell so much food in a restaurant and you all sell a lot of it. But when you brew beer, you sell that off premise. And so all of a sudden, I stopped in Ozark at the right there on the way up the pig trail, and there's Lost 40 all over that convenience store there. It's everywhere. And I just looked at 2018 statistics, and you've been around for several years, but not forever. And you're making 3 times more beer than anybody else in Arkansas, and we've got a booming craft beer industry.
Well, and in fairness, we're brewing about 16,000, 17,000 barrels of beer a year, but which if you go one state over in any direction, that's nothing.
Okay.
We are still a tiny brewery in the scope of breweries. We are one of the larger in Arkansas, but we like being small. Relatively speaking, and we at this point, we're very, in the beer world, for us anyway, it's about quality, quality, quality,
Sure.
quality.
And variety. You all have all kinds of one-offs and things
Yeah.
that you do to keep it exciting. But the thing, too, that people, if you haven't been to Lost 40, you don't understand, is that, yeah, it's a brewery. And you can watch beer being made and you can drink beer. But it's a booming restaurant. Not to divulge trade secrets, but I was talking to Amber one time, and I was like, I'm just curious, like, all your restaurants, like, what's the biggest deal going? She goes, Sunday brunch at Lost 40.
And I got to give a lot of credit there to Cash Ashley, who's no longer with us, but was a huge part of developing our brunch program, and a good friend of mine, and someone that I really admire. And also John Beachboard, who has a real passion for brunch.
Yeah.
It's not our biggest day.
Okay.
It's if we had more seating, it would be. Which we may at some point.
Well, you might have a little expansion room.
Our biggest day of the week is Saturday night at Local Lime in Rogers, Arkansas.
That's right.
and that is a function of. It is twice as big as the Local Lime in Little Rock.
Yeah.
It has more seats.
And you put a Big Orange there, and then Local Lime, which opened. Did it open in 2019? Local Lime.
I don't remember. I
mean, okay, it's been open for a while, but not.
I think they opened late 2018, and then earlier 2018 for Big Orange. We've spent a lot of time since then. And really in the restaurant business, any successful restaurateur will tell you. You're constantly going back and reassessing everything, not only the guest experience, the way things are cleaned, the bathrooms, the recipes. We've done blind tastings and redeveloped the Zaza salad dressing recipes 800 times.
Wow.
And we do that for we blind taste beef constantly at Big Orange. We're the process of, can this be 5% better, 10% better, 15% better, is never ending. So whenever I get a break and I'm not in opening mode, and I get to go back to, hey, this was great 8 years ago. Could it be better today?
Well, you should be proud of yourself and your team for that dedication, because it's easy to coast. I mean, because you got a hot thing going all over. But what you're saying is the key to continued success and continuous improvement. And then there's Hyde's Taco and Tamale.
Yeah.
Which, again, I don't know. I need to know somebody up there, because every time I try to go there, there's 45 people standing outside waiting to get in. And I'm like, well, I guess we're going somewhere else. But that location was the original Brownings. And I grew up just down the street from there. And one of the stories I've told on this show before is my parents would love to go out and eat, and they loved that Tex-Mex, which is all we had then. And I fell over in my high chair when I was 18 months old at Brownings, much to my mother's chagrin. And I think the hit on the head may have had a lot to do with how it turned out. But so that place was, even I went there as a young adult, and it was the same old, but, it was all we had. And now it's fabulous, and it's your place.
I have my father, who was a cheese dip fanatic from birth, and who was a Brownings fanatic, and my mother was too. He took me up there and let me play with chips when I was 3 years old and cheese dip. And I remember going up there before going over to the Heights Theater and having that punch that was just, I don't know how they got so much sugar in a 16-ounce glass, and cheese dip. And it's very nostalgic for all of us who were raised in Little Rock. I mostly grew up in Hillcrest, but I had connections in the Heights. I would go up there occasionally to hang out, and when that space came available, it broke my heart, first of all.
Yeah.
Because I wanted the old school Brownings to be there forever, and but also, it was really important to me that, and part of the reason by this time Russ McDonough was part of our restaurant group, and Russ is such a stabilizing force. He's so intelligent, one of the most caring, loving, compassionate people in Little Rock. Him and his wife Kim, And the best partner you could ever imagine is a huge part of what just gives our group just an immense amount of integrity. And he was played a huge part along with John in developing the idea and following through with the brewery. But Russ was raised in Little Rock in the Heights and had this deep respect for Brownings.
He had a few dozen Saltillo plates for sure.
Indeed. But we, I think all of us, I mean, Ben, John, Russ, and I all, had a lot of nostalgia over Brownings. And we wanted to develop something totally new and exciting, all new, unique recipes that I spent months and months in the kitchen developing, along with Ben Brainerd and some other amazing chefs that helped us out with that. We wanted to respect Brownings, the tradition of what we call Arc-Mex.
Right.
And we wanted to reinvent it, but without diluting the honor and respect that we had for that great institution.
Yeah.
And I think we accomplished that pretty well.
Definitely. Like I say, the crowds are huge.
Amanda Ivy, by the way, was she was in the kitchen with us when we developed that concept, and I think she got a really good taste of, in about a 4-month period. We made that cheese dip 4,000 times. And we made those tamales. Gosh, we must have remade that recipe at least 1,000 times before we were even close to being satisfied.
Yeah, well, you came out with a great product for sure.
Yeah.
And I think it also one of Amber's best jobs of making a place look great. It's such a good vibe in there. Assuming I can ever get back in, but I just need to come early or late, I guess, is what I need to do. Hey, all right. Well, we've had a great chat, and I want to continue it because I really want to turn now to Scott McGehee, the man outside of work. We're recording this in late October of 2019, and you said just 3 days ago you returned from a trip to hurricane-devastated Bahamas. Tell us why you went, who you went with, what you saw, and what you did while you were there.
So this was Hurricane Dorian, which,
Right.
As we're recording today, that was about 7 weeks ago. And we... as a chef, there's one skill that I have that's really critical in times of disaster is I can feed people.
Right.
And so I have this this gift that I appreciate and don't take for granted. And I can feed people on a large scale. I know how to cook rice for 9,000 people.
Wow.
So
That's some big pots.
Chef Jose Andreas, internationally acclaimed chef from Spain, who has one of the biggest hearts of anyone you'd ever meet, has an organization called the World Central Kitchen, and they have a very simple mission, which is go where there is poverty and disaster and people are in greatest need, and feed them 2 hot meals a day. And they were on the ground in Abaco Island, where it was the hardest hit. 80 miles. It's a long island and kind of archipelago. 80 miles of that island were flattened. Every structure was flattened. A lot of death and destruction. About 17,000 residents. About 8,000 or 9,000 were too poor to leave.
Yeah.
There's a big Haitian community there that was displaced after the earthquake. But this place, and I got to give a lot of love and respect for Kyle Pounders, who's one of my dear, dear friends. Ironically, he owns a burger truck called Excalibur.
Oh, I know it well.
It's
a hell of a burger.
It's a hell of a burger, and as anyone that knows me knows that I don't compete with local. I support local.
Right.
And I don't care if you own a burger place or a taco place or a pizza place. I'm going to be there for you in your time of need. If you need change on a Sunday, if you need a case of beef to get through the weekend, Eric over at North Bar needed buns one day, and I delivered them and dropped them off, and he knows he can call me 24/7. Don Dugan knows he can call me. Cappy Peck's my across the street neighbor. I'm always good for a cup of sugar.
Yeah.
And, Rich Cosgrove, the list goes on.
Yeah, that's great.
But Kyle and I became good friends. We connected a few years ago. Kyle has been down there since about day 6,
Wow.
and donating his time, his energy, his heart, his soul, literally saving these people's lives. Without the World Central Kitchen, without the hard work of people like Cal Pounders, who is a really an Arkansas gem. Kyle doesn't talk about himself or what he does for the world and the community. When that fire hit California, he got in his food truck and he drove out there.
Wow.
And he fed people, and that didn't make the news.
Right.
Kyle didn't heavily promote it, but I'm here to promote him because he deserves it. And so he's down there in Abaco, and he sends me a WhatsApp because it's the social media down there is pretty sketchy and it's hard to get a cell signal. He says, "Man, we need you, brother. Come, I know you raise a lot of money for good causes, but we need your boots on the ground."
Right.
And
we need you making rice for 9,000.
and so I flew down there, and no electricity, water. Running water out of the taps was very sporadic, so I didn't always get a shower. I got there with I'll be 50 soon, so I've got a lifetime of shoulder pain and back pain and knee pain, and from cooking my entire life since I was a little kid, really. All that pain goes away when you see thousands of people who've lost their children, their mothers, their loved ones,
and their homes,
and they have nothing. And when you hand them a hot meal, all of your first world troubles and pains just disappear.
Yeah.
And I went down there as a dishwasher and onion chopper. I left my ego in Arkansas, and I poured my heart and soul into it.
That's great.
And I'm going back. Yellow Rocket is going to develop a strike team. Now, obviously, hunger in Arkansas is a huge priority for us. We partner with Arkansas Hunger Alliance. We partner with No Kid Hungry, and that is an equal priority. But also, when these devastating storms happen off the coast of Florida, in our backyard or New Orleans or wherever it may be, if the World Central Kitchen, if they call me and my team, we want to have a rotating group of chefs that we can send down there to help put out. Right now, in between Freeport, Nassau, and Abaco, they're cooking about 50 to 60,000 hot meals a day right now.
Wow. Well, people have to have food to live. Well, that's fabulous. All right, we're going to start winding down a little bit. So great ideas and hard work are important to success in any industry, but good luck and nice breaks along the way can help. Can you point to anything that you'd say other than making brilliant decisions that has just been called kind of like a break for you, or a good break, or a fortunate turn of luck?
Gosh, I have to remind myself that I'm human. I've had I've made a lot of mistakes. I've had a lot of lucky breaks, and getting that job at Chez Panisse, just totally changed my life. I've made a lot of mistakes and poor decisions throughout my life. I think that's part of being human. And we're all going to suffer bad decisions and tragedy in our lives over and over. That's something we have to realize as humans. But we pick ourselves up and we right our wrongs, and we adore the people that we may have accidentally hurt along the way, and we try to be better humans and examples every day. Yeah. And that's all we can do.
Yeah.
And so,
well put. All right, let me ask you a couple of off-the-wall questions here I like to include. Have you had any famous people eating in one of your restaurants? And if so, what was that like?
So, when I worked at Chez Panisse, we had famous people every night.
Yeah.
Sharon Stone and famous basketball players and Chris Webber would come in, and Bill Clinton ate there with us, but in Little Rock, the most famous person to eat at one of my restaurants, Alice Waters, came to Little Rock and ate at Boulevard Bread Company.
Oh, that's great!
And
back to see your boy Scott.
Yeah, so I was a nervous wreck, she's very picky.
Yeah,
and she's a perfectionist. So, but I made sure she had a great experience.
That's great. Well, that's good. I'm sure that was reconnecting with her had to be great. Well, listen, I want to thank you so much for taking time to visit with me today. I hope all of you out there in Heaping Spoonful land have enjoyed this conversation with Scott and his amazing career. And I guess other than hinting that maybe there's a little bit of expansion going on at Lost 40, are you like, okay, 9 places, 5 concepts, let's just keep working on this for a while, or do you have other thoughts about things you might want to do?
I have an amazing team. My work family is my life. I love every one of them like family. Just to mention a couple names, I couldn't name all of them now. Chris McMillan is my executive sous chef who's in charge of the food at all 9 locations. Erica Summers is our operations manager. Brittany Hallmark, Brittany Wheeler, Jared Johnson, who's in charge of community outreach. We have the most incredible HR team in Arkansas, led by Gina Gregory.
Because you've got 800 people working for you.
Yeah, we have an amazing organization. We have a zero tolerance policy when it comes to any nonsense,
right,
which is really important to us. We also have an open door policy, which is really, really important. Any of our work family, whether you've been there for a day or 10 years, they can go. They can circumvent their manager if they feel uncomfortable, with zero chance of any kind of repercussion, and they can call me directly and let me be there for them in their time of need. And so I think that's a really important part of our organization.
Yeah, that's great. And again, that's everybody we've talked to on this show has talked about treating your people right to being the key to success, and clearly that's at the heart of Yellow Rocket, and that's why you've got what you got.
You treat people, our creed is you treat people with dignity, appreciation, and respect, without exception, every conversation, every time, every day, that's what we aspire to.
I'm sure that goes for guests and coworkers.
Absolutely,
yeah.
And to each other, and to my partners, and to my work family, and to my guests. We love feedback. I prefer like a personal message first before it ends up on Yelp.
You've gotten a few of those. You've gotten a few of those from me.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't mind pointing out things.
That's the greatest gift I can receive from a guest,
yeah,
is feedback. And so, a lot of guests think they're going to offend me, but there's no greater gift than someone reaching out to me and saying, "Hey, I had this experience."
Sure.
And nothing excites me more than having an opportunity to say, "Hey, we messed up, but we're going to fix that,
yeah,
and we're going to develop a new system, and we're going to make it right.
And we're going to learn from our mistakes." Well, listen, I'm proud of you. Your arrival on the scene here has personally made my life much better. I mean, I love all your places. I hang out at them all the time, and I look forward to watching what's coming next. So listen, everybody, thanks a lot for joining Scott McGehee and me, Kelly Bass, on Heaping Spoonful. We're every second Tuesday and fourth Tuesday of the month. You can go find a new podcast wherever you like to listen to them. So have a good one. Thanks, Scott.
Hey, thank you. And by the way, there is one more concept. It's my bucket list concept. It's top secret, and you'll know about it soon enough. Yeah, you'll be one of the first to know.
All right, I can't wait. Thanks. Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Heaping Spoonful. On behalf of all of us at Benny Keith Foods Mid-South Division, please know how much we love connecting you with the legends of the culinary scene and their unique stories. I look forward to the next time we can offer you another Heaping Spoonful.